Hello, welcome. Good afternoon, good morning, and for those of you who are on Zoom, good evening, wherever you are. I'm Mia Masaoka, and I'm the chair of the Visual Art program here at Columbia University. And this morning, we're going to introduce you not only to our program and the faculty, but also you're free to ask any questions you will have, so please retain them, maybe jot them down or remember them, because there'll be a time to be able to answer questions. And just as a reminder, from 2 to 5, there's an amazing open studios right across the street of our second years. And that can be anything from literally the students just opening up their door for you to experience their works in progress, or to have conversations with the artists, the student artists in their studio. And just as a reminder, it's good if those questions are related to their work practice and not so much to some of the questions that can be better answered in this panel. So the prospective students apply through the discipline, for example, expanded practice, sculpture, moving image, painting, photography, printmaking, and sound art, where we just had a separate event in the last hours. So we have a total of 54 students in our 2-year program, and 27 are admitted each year. And once accepted, MFA students are able to explore a wide range of media while developing their skills to articulate their individual vision. And as electives, you're able to take courses in the broader resource university that is Columbia and Barnard, and classes in philosophy, art history, curation, architecture, acoustics, etc. And you know, community is a really important part of the reason to be in an MFA. Actually, we just had the 60th year anniversary, and all of the alums there talked about how important community was that they had gotten here while they were students, and how it has sustained them throughout the different phases of their lives. So, you know, at no other time will you be able to be in such close proximity, such intimate situations with others, peers who are engaged in different art-making practices, and who you can have kinds of interesting conversations like that until 3 in the morning in your studios. So it's really a special time in your life. And building community, not only with the cohort here, but also the community that is New York City. So that's the museums, the galleries, the underground spaces, the lofts, if some that still exist, and the different mentors who you will be exposed to, and the different people coming into your studios, etc. So our program is small and responsive, and we have a 5-to-1 ratio, that's 5:1 teacher ratio, which affords each MFA candidate valuable time with the full-time faculty here, and allows the program to respond to students' interests and needs. And lifelong relationships are formed in these settings, in these communities, and students participate in a multifaceted curriculum with full-time visiting faculty, visiting critics, artists, and looking at each other's work, establishing studios working intensely practices with artist mentors, and taking electives from the other departments that we mentioned earlier. Now we'll go across the table, and I'll ask each of our faculty to introduce themselves, starting with John.
John Kessler, Director of Sculpture.
In the microphone, please.
John Kessler, Director of Expanded Practice and Sculpture.
Hi, Matthew Buckingham, currently concentration head for Moving Image this semester, and I teach Moving Image and the Darkroom.
Hi, Delphine Fawundu, and I teach within the photography department.
Hi, David Antonio Cruz. I'm the graduate director and the head of painting and drawing.
Hi, I'm Naeem Mohaiman. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Studies, and I'm the head of the photography concentration.
Hi, my name is Kenny Rivero, and I'm an assistant professor in painting.
Hi, I'm Sable Lee Smith, and I primarily teach in sculpture, but I'm teaching moving image classes this year.
Hi, I'm Thomas Vu Daniel, and I am the concentration head for printmaking.
And like the community that y'all have here as students, we as faculty also have a community as faculty. And so in addition to full-time faculty, there's part-time faculty and and visiting faculty. And some of those all just that are current, Karina Aguilera Strinsky, Shirley Bahar, Tyler Coburn, Matthew Galeggett, Liz DeChenis, Lizzie De Vita, Luba Dubdraz, Neil Goldberg, Bezira Khan, Tommy Martinez, Sadef Pader, Pamela Sneed, Chernay Thompson, Cheney, as we say, Jasmine Wall, and Craig Zaminello. So there's really a rich community of faculty that are not represented here at the table. In the materials that you've been given, you'll also find a list of some of these critics that we won't have time to mention here, and also the lecturers. So please refer to your list that you have on your table. So now I'll turn things over to David, our Director of Graduate Studies.
Hello, everyone. The Visual Arts Graduate Program structure. So I'm going to go over the program. Our core curriculum comprises of 5 components: graduate studies, research and practice. Those are weekly studio visits, small group critiques on Wednesday, the Visiting Artist Lecture Series, programmed and run by students, about 13 guest speakers a year, the critical thinking courses in visual arts at the university at large, and graduate discipline seminars. The last component is the Artist Mentor Program. Current mentors are William Cordova and Valerie Hammond, who lead one group together, David Humphrey, Michael Jew, Ralph Lemon, Ken Oseki, Matthew Ritchie, Sasha Sikander, Micheline Thomas, and Rona Heffman. Our MFA students also take elective courses: studio classes, professional practice, university classes. There are 3 moments in the program where our students make their own work public: the first year exhibition, open studios, second year only, which is happening today, the thesis exhibition, which happens in the spring. There are other opportunities in the program as well. The Gilman visits, which are 5 to 6 a year. A small group of students visit artists across the New York area. There's Friday sessions. There's teaching assistantship for 2 classes, collaboration with the art history department, the Neiman Gallery exhibitions, the program awards, summer residencies, the Dean's Research Grant, and undergraduate mentoring.
I'm also Sound Art, and I'm the director of the Sound Art program. We just had our info session before this one, and we admit 3 students a year for a 6 total cohort. And now I'd like to introduce Julie Dobrow, our Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid, to give you more details about applying for scholarship funding. Please keep any questions you have in the, so that you can ask them after the presentation. Julie?
Thank you so much, Mia. Hi, everyone, again. I'm also an alum of the theater program, so I've been hanging around the School of the Arts for a long time, and it is a really special place, so we hope you guys can sense that as well. Just a couple of pieces of information I want to share. The first is the admissions and financial aid staff, because if you decide to apply, and we hope you do, we are the people that, if you have any questions, we'll be along with you on this journey. So downstairs, Tori Sheffer and Niquette Johnson were the people that checked you in. We have Kenny Wong, he's somewhere helping with our Zoom feed, and then myself. So please do not hesitate throughout the process to email questions. That's probably the easiest way for us to get them, but you can also certainly call. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. I want to say a particular word to international students. There may be some on the Zoom and maybe some in the room as well. It was, as many of you know, a very challenging year for international students to get here. I'm pleased to report that there was only one student across the entire School of the Arts who was not able to get here on time because of visa issues. So our International Students and Scholars Office works very, very closely with you, tirelessly, to make sure that you guys are able to get here. And I just want to enforce that this is a very welcoming environment. We love international students. Our class is 33% international, coming from all over the world. And we want you to come here. We will work with you to make sure that you can. So please know that you are warmly welcomed at the School of the Arts and at Columbia as a whole, and the New York City. It is a very international city. A couple of just pieces of information that are important for you to know. The application deadline is January 20th. There's also a financial aid application, which is due on February 3rd. It's really important that you know that financial aid is not factored in, or your need is not factored into any admissions decisions. We are need blind, so if you are in need of a scholarship, please do not hesitate to apply for one. The admissions committee, it's reviewed by the faculty who make the determinations as to who's going to be admitted. The financial aid piece lives in my office, so please do not hesitate to submit the scholarship applications if in fact you are in need. A couple other things. We have a panel on Monday, December 2nd from 1 to 5 p.m. We're going to send you guys an email about this probably tomorrow. It's called Art School Demystified. And each of the faculty are going to be there for a 1-hour session, so you can ask specific concentration-related questions. You can, of course, do that today as well. But so that is going to be, is that a week from Monday? 2 weeks from Monday. 2 weeks from Monday. There's also going to be a general financial aid Q&A session on Zoom on December 18th at 7 p.m. Again, we'll let you guys know about all of that. But that's for any specific questions that you may have about the financial aid applications. And just a couple other things I want to make sure you're aware of in this building. So in the lobby, there's an exhibit by Joan Jonas, who is part of our first graduating class, celebrating the 60th anniversary of the School of the Arts. There's also an exhibit in the Wallach Gallery, which is on the 6th floor of this building. It's opening in about 10 minutes. And that exhibit is Lottie Rosenfeld, Disobedient Spaces. She's a Chilean artist, so we certainly encourage you to run down if you have time. There's the open studios across the street from 2 to 5. There's also tours. We have current students who are giving you tours of the facilities, so we'll give you information about that after the session. And that's it. Any questions that you have that are not answered today, our email address is soaadmissions@columbia.edu. It's on all over our website, but please feel free to send those. And those of you who are on Zoom, if you have any questions for today, you can put them in the chat, and we will try to get to them as well. So, thanks.
Thank you. And so in addition to financial questions for Julie, we can now open up, both for those who are on Zoom and also here in person, questions for each of the broader questions of the program or for individual faculty. And there'll be a microphone that can go around. Thank you. So just raise your hand and they'll bring you the mic. I know some of you got questions.
Do you guys want to maybe say each a little bit of what your work is? Or? No, you do not. Okay.
What was that, Julie? Did you say something?
I had a suggestion that was torn down. We can come back to it. It's all good. What did she say? It's all good. Please don't be shy.
Hi, I'm an international student, so I want to know about like financial aids, like in terms of how much more financial aids like our federal government's founded, and how much our international student will be able to receive, like, and then will there be a huge difference in like the amount of like monies and the merit-based scholarship availabilities?
So scholarships are purely need-based, so everyone who is admitted to the visual arts program who shows need will get a scholarship. They are equally distributed among domestic students and international students, so international students are not penalized in any way, depending upon what your need score is based on the financial aid data that you submit. International students will be treated exactly the same as domestic students. The one more challenging piece is that you're not eligible for federal loans here, for any federal support, so that is a bit of a challenge. we have had international students who have gotten loans in the US, but you typically need a US-based cosigner. So if you have a friend, a relative, someone who's here who's willing to be a cosigner for you, then you can get loans here, but they're typically private loans, not the federal loans that domestic students and permanent residents are able to access. Sure.
Actually, can I jump in real quick? In the past, I mean, the students who comes through, let's say printmaking gates, there is an additional fellowship. I just need to say that because a lot of people come in and they say, hey, why wasn't I told this? So there's, on top of the regular package, there is a printmaking fellowship. That's it's an addition.
We have some questions online. Let's start with these. What does studio access look like? Is there 24-hour access?
Who wants to take that?
24/7, 365. Yes.
Did you hear that? 24/7, 365. Okay. Can students move between disciplines easily? For example, if I apply through expanded practice sculpture, can my focus change to painting?
Well, I can answer that question. While you apply in one area and maybe get accepted into it, you don't officially switch the discipline. So you stay in your discipline for the entirety of the 2 years as your concentration. However, given that, you're free to take courses and classes and studio classes in any other discipline, as well as art history, other classes in the university. And you can have an identity change within, oh, I want to call myself this. I consider myself more of a painter who uses photography, or I consider myself, you know, there's a way of you considering yourself certain aspects with your materials, with your et cetera. So that's very flexible, but you do stay in that concentration for the 2 years.
Our program is very interdisciplinary, so once you enter the program, you're able to move from medium to medium. So there isn't a way to keeping you in one area alone. You're also taking courses with all the students, so once you arrive, you're always in conversation with everyone else that's working in multiple mediums. You're also seeing all the instructors that deal with different mediums, so they really, there's not one exact focus, and once you arrive, you're seeing everyone and you're spending time with everyone, so we don't create restrictions, so you're able to move from one discipline into another, but you're always together, speaking about the work.
I'll add another thing, which is, sorry, Dr. were you going to go?
Were you going to talk about the TA?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So when you apply, you are applying within a concentration. Your portfolio is being viewed by people who specialize in that. So even if, let's say, you have photography and video in your toolkit, if you're applying in the photography track, you might put front and center your photography portfolio, and vice versa if you're applying to moving image. And that attachment continues as you move through the program over the 2 years. Your teaching assistantships are concentration specific, right? So if you've applied through moving image, your teaching assistantships in second semester and third semester will be within that, and there's understanding that that concentration head and those faculty are a little more responsible for mentoring you. You're more likely to check in with them, perhaps if you have questions specific to what will I do afterwards. But then in terms of what David also mentioned, in terms of how you experience the program, Monday evening for Graduate Studio, Tuesday evening for Visiting Artist Lecture Series, and Wednesday evening for Group Crit, those are all everybody together. You're all experiencing it together, and you might discover new interests that you didn't know you had, and you have access to everything. One way to also think about it, although it won't be super visible right now, is if you come to either the first year show or the second year show, and you look at what people have put as their works, and then you ask what concentration they came through, you might be surprised to find that somebody came in through one thing and then added more thing. It's very typical to add new mediums to your set of things that you work on.
And in addition to Naeem's comment about adding new mediums to your setup, the questions come up about collaboration. And within the course of meeting all these amazing fellow artists and peers, we really encourage collaborative relationships working, and it's a really amazing cross-pollination that can occur. We actually had one sound artist and one photographer, and they did collaborations throughout all of their shows, including first year show and thesis. So developing collaborations and learning how to collaborate it. It's not always easy with really big personalities, how to drive a ship on and share responsibility for artistic leadership. It's not always an easy kind of thing to do. And this is an amazing place of learning some of those skill sets of how to collaborate with others. It's totally voluntary. You don't need to do that, but it's something that you can take advantage of.
Question in the room over there.
Hi, my name is Hannah Lawson, and I was wondering if you could talk about some of the machine shop or metalworking facilities you have, because I blacksmith, so I was wondering if you have a forge.
We do not have a forge. We don't even have gases in the oxyacetylene up in the metal shop.
Okay.
That said, we have everything else in the metal shop.
Okay.
We just can't cast.
Got it.
We have kilns that do glass, and we have ceramics, and we have full-on wood shops. So we also have mold making facilities and laser cutters. Not a tremendous amount of digital fabrication. If digital fabrication, 3D printers, and so on and so forth is your jam, you can do that at the makerspace up in engineering, but we don't have those 3D fabrication facility in the sculpture expanded practice. But other than that, you'll take a tour today. You'll see the metal shop.
Okay.
You'll see the wood shop, and it's not state of the art, but it really gets the job done. I mean, there's except for casting, almost everybody can do what they need to do.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a question on Zoom. Describe what an A+ portfolio looks like. What does it include? What does it avoid?
Matthew, do you want to take that?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, they're asking about what an A+ portfolio looks like and what should they include or avoid when submitting their work.
At the time of applying, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, well, yeah, that's a good question. Multi-part. I think what I would say at a minimum or at the base level is that the admissions committees are trying to discover who you are. We want to know what kind of artist you are and want to become. We're doing that primarily by looking at the work initially. What does the work say to us? What is the relation among the works? And from there, then we do move on to looking at what the written portion of the application includes, especially physical descriptions of the work. Very important to understand. When we're trying to understand you through your work, we need to know physically what is the work. And then beyond that, of course, the description of the work. How are you relating to your own ideas through language? That extends into the artist statement then. That's sort of the third round of looking and thinking about each application. We look at the artist statement as a creative piece of writing, as a creative document. How do you expand your ideas with language when you want to make them clear to us? Sometimes at these sessions we get questions about how you prioritize your work in the portfolio. Chronology is not necessarily important. It's important that we understand when a work is made. It's pretty usual to begin with the most recent work. That's the work we're the most focused on. Seeing your recent development as an artist is interesting, but not essential. You have a certain amount of space to fill in the application form. Think about that. Think about what do you want the committee to be looking at. We look at the work together, we project it. That's the time where we're really focused on reviewing everything, all together in the same space, taking time, looking at each portfolio and each application.
All right, next question. Oh, I'm sorry, Dave, go ahead.
If you are reapplying to the program, we normally do remember your work, and so we're looking to see how your work has grown and expanded. So just be thoughtful about that as you reapply. There's also occasionally we have situations where people put PDFs in the images. Please avoid doing that. We are not able to see them. That actually becomes very difficult. So just upload one image per area. Okay?
Is that a related question?
Yes.
Julia. Microphone. Oh, let's take this one and then we'll do this. Oh, there she is.
If, for example, I'm applying for like installation and sculpture, like if I have a project that is pretty big and have a lot of different perspectives, would you recommend to upload maybe 2 photos of the same project to better understand the installation? Because I feel that like 3D projects are just, yeah, it's hard to like put only one picture if it looks different from every angle.
Yeah, sure. Details, one detail or 2 details could be helpful. I think that's true with any work that isn't immediately self-explanatory. It also could be a very brief video. It could be a really quick walkthrough or turnaround in a panorama of a piece.
Thank you.
All right, a question from Zoom. Can we hear more about the MFA curriculum structure regarding research and writing alongside a student's studio practice? Are there opportunities for research development in class settings?
You can take specific classes that are seminar models, and our seminars circulate through different mediums. So sometimes you might be in a situation where your first semester, the seminar is in sculpture, sound art, or photograph, and you can develop a project as part of that, and that can be research-based. It's usually expected that the final output will have a very large physical, in however you define it, visual component. So the final project should not be like just a paper at the end of it. Usually it should be like something physical that you've made, and then it can be accompanied by a paper you've written. I'll also add something which is related to what was said very early on, which is your ability to take classes everywhere at Columbia, which is a very important distinction from every other art school. So let's say you decide to take a class in the anthropology department, and there's a final research paper due there. We have had students sometimes talk to that professor and say, can I submit as my fulfillment a visual project? Sometimes some of the professors will be pretty tough and we don't have control over that, and they'll say, you still have to write the paper. And so you might actually be doing double the work. Sometimes we've had some professors that are okay with you submitting a visual project instead. And then we have students who want to also learn how to write a research paper as part of the process. I'll say one other thing, that if you venture outside our building and take classes in other departments, those professors are usually quite thrilled to have an artist in the class. You might sometimes be the only one there. So that's kind of a plus in terms of standing out in that class.
Hi, I wonder, could you share more about like how is the environment of critique and other peers and to peer-to-peer and peer-to-faculty, like what is the, without a better words, vibe is? Because I come from like West Coast of like soft talk critique, and then and I know East Coast are way intense. So let's say one, like if we put UC Berkeley as a 1 and BART as a 10, where would you put Columbia? Thank you.
Well, we do have various styles of critique, and you have, by the end of your first semester, you would have been critiqued by a number of people that you might just feel like, okay, I've had so many people in here, but like within the program, one thing that I think we champion is those various styles. But then also, for example, in group critique, you have agency. And we do make space for the students to say, well, this is something I would like to try out. You know, so it's definitely, we don't have like a standard, this is what we do. It is very flexible depending on who's in your studio.
And it always depends.
It's also a slightly different structure than many schools. It's a small group, and it rotates. So you'll have 2 group critiques every semester, 8 over the year, and you'll be working with at least, maybe 6 different instructors leading those critiques with 6 or 8 students. So it's different in that sense also.
Do other faculty have comments to add to this group critique question, which is actually very important? Okay. Question?
Yeah, I had a question about in the form it speaks on the presentation of material. So if I'm applying with photography, would it be okay in one of the images to have 2 images together to show like the entirety of an installation shot?
Yeah, I mean, we've received, people, there's a constraint of how many you can upload, so people come up with all sorts of techniques to stuff more into that. And Matthew gave one example, which is the walk-around video, very short. Another is, I think you're talking about compositing 2 images together. As long as it's not a PDF, that's okay, yeah. And then one other thing I'll say, photography often gets people also wanting to show a video piece that they've also worked on. And if somebody uploads that, we're okay with that, but we would want the photography piece to be first and foremost, and then your additional mediums, if you're also adding that, to be towards the end. But there is like a Tetris you have to perform in trying to figure out what to present, and everybody's trying to show as much material as possible within those constraints. The one thing you can't do, which David already referred, is like upload a 20-page PDF as an image, because that's, one, it's not really possible to read, and then it's sort of seen as, oh, you're bypassing it's also a technique to learn how to present yourself within that economy.
Yeah, use the limitation to prioritize and edit. And also, it's not a great idea to put too many, even 2 images may be too small to really get a feeling of something. Figure out how to make the work talk. Also, I should mention, in terms of moving image, there is a time limit, and there's a similar limit of number of works that can be submitted. But it's important to include a link to the full video. In later rounds, we may want to see the entire work. Even if it's 2 hours, we might watch that on our own outside of the committee. So that's an important part for moving image. And I mean moving image as a component of any of your applications, but especially people who are applying within moving image.
Yeah. You'll hear that every concentration has its different needs. So in painting, I prefer just one image of the work versus doing details, unless the material, the surface is so specific that it needs to be seen, then do a detail, but we prefer just to see just one image per slide.
Also, the caption field of the portfolio is somewhere where you can add additional information and therefore give us more of a sense of what the project is. So maybe not just put name of piece, medium, and year, but put a little bit more. There is space to do that, and that's also somewhere you can sometimes put the link that Matthew referred.
And also, think about submitting your best work and not necessarily trying to second guess what the panel might want, or what aesthetically you are guessing they might like, but really what you think your best work is. Do we have a question?
I did have a question on, if you're like a mixed media, multimedia artist, are we encouraged to show that in our application? Say I'm applying for painting, would I not include a sculpture piece, or would I include that in my application?
It's my turn to talk. I guess in this just kind of is a summary again of what a lot of people have been saying, right? The important thing is that you show your best work and a kind of confidence in your practice. The concentrations are meant to have the right sort of eyes on your portfolio. So if there's a majority or if the ethos behind your work is painting, right, then you apply to that, but then you show what you do. And I don't think there are going to be many restrictions on, like, you know, how porous or kind of like expansive the work is, but you have to figure out, you know, what is the right way to frame what your practice is doing, and then pick the things that illustrate that the most.
Thank you.
You could also consider making 2 strong applications. You can apply to more than one area.
Thank you.
I'm going to combine 2 questions online because we have quite a few and I want to be cognizant of time. So there's a question about how the mentorship program works, if they're assigned or if they can they choose them themselves? And also, what resources does the school provide after graduation in terms of networking?
I'll do the first part of that question. The mentorship program works. You make a list of your top choices and you're assigned to them. So you are assigned to different mentors for the entire time that you're here at the school. So it's based on preference, on who do you want to work with, and the availability of a slot in that group.
Post-graduation resources, anyone?
Yeah, I can say one thing about that. We do have resources both while you're here and after you graduate. There's a very comprehensive artist resource center that compiles every week, almost like a 2 comprehensive list of grants. You'll get tired going through them. Not all of them are applicable to visual arts, but I think it's also useful to see what are grants out there for film, theater, and writing, just to know your peer space, because we are within a school that also contains film, theater, writing, and film studies. And then one of the axes along which you really can drive the outcome is the faculty that you're in mentorship relationship with, to whom you can go to for advice on what to apply for. Sometimes people apply for things that they actually don't qualify for. For example, a mid-career grant. That's kind of a waste of your time and a waste of the recommender's time. So it's good to brainstorm all of that, and that relationship can continue for many years after graduation. The one thing that we see is that certain people, by their personality, might kind of go a little silent after graduation, and certain others might be better at staying in touch. You know, that comes to maybe your personality, maybe you're not in New York so much or whatever it is, but I think staying in touch somehow appropriately is a very useful way that, you know, you might be 3 years out, but then something comes up and you get back in touch, and that faculty happens to know exactly the best way to apply for that, or tells you, actually, no, don't apply to that one, but apply to this other one instead. So it is also very much about how proactive you are, especially after graduation.
Questions from Zoom, Julie?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. What is a favorite memory of the community built through the program that could elucidate the culture of the cohort?
Who wants it? Matthew? Or are there other people?
I mean, you could address the culture of the cohort in general, I think.
It is a fantastic question.
Favorite memory of the cohort?
The favorite memory of the community built through the program that could elucidate the culture of the cohort.
I mean, it may be while everybody is thinking of their favorite memory, I'll do a preface. I mean, I think the cohort changes every year, right? Every year, 27 new people, new personalities, new practices, new geographies, new generations come in. So there is not one way to define it, and I don't think it can be fixed. I think there's potentially a problem if the culture is fixed, right? The idea is that there are different people that create different kinds of possibilities, and so I think that's the kind of beauty of the program, that the culture changes and shifts. And then those are things that we have to kind of figure out how to navigate. Now, someone will give their favorite memory.
A couple of weeks ago, Tomas, Rick Riturvanija, and I took a group of students apple picking in the fall. It was gorgeous. And then up to Tomas's house for an overnight, a sleepover, and we had a bonfire, and we cooked this incredible meal that Rick kind of directed. And with found mushrooms that were found on a golf course. I think that was the part of the ingredient. But that's a very strong memory just from a couple of weeks ago, which it was wonderfully unique and so much fun, and we all got to, really know each other. So that was fun.
I think and this also speaks to kind of opportunities after graduating. Two students from last year starting their own gallery and kind of taking that initiative to really create their own space and not waiting for collectors or not waiting for galleries to kind of find them, but really creating their own community and, creating their own shows and things like that. So I think that's my favorite kind of thing that's happened in the last year.
Yeah, it was actually going to be my example too. So actually, great that you brought that up. I think you're talking about Umarel, right? Yeah. So Georgia Aliata and Ridwana Rahman, two graduates from last year, formed their own art collective / gallery, and it doesn't have a physical address. It keeps moving around, which keeps them lean without overhead. And that's very typical of what's happening now as people are finishing and continuing often to live in New York City, a city that is in some kind of intense pressure about finding exhibitions, getting chosen. Many of our grads are choosing to organize their own exhibitions. That's one example. There are others. We haven't mentioned the summer show that happens between first and second year and after second year. That's organized by our students entirely, for which they go and find a space, usually downtown. At least for me, it's almost always how I find out about new spaces. We have a current student, Alejandro, who just curated a show called After the Last Sky at the Neiman Gallery on campus. So students are also taking charge of the means of showing their work rather than just passively waiting, which I also think is kind of a function of being in New York City.
A couple more questions, and then we will be breaking into groups. So put your hands a little bit higher, and so we can make sure that we can. There's a question here, and there was another one here, right? Did I see a hand here? Okay, 3 questions. So then I think after that we will need to break into groups, but let's start with this question here.
Hi y'all, happy Sunday. Thank you for having us here today. My name is Joe Scarpetta. I'm a graduate from Brooklyn College. I have a twofold question. One being about financial aid, one being about resources on campus, more so about materials. One being about financial aid. I'm curious if you guys still have the Neiman's Art Center, I believe that's what it's called, the fellowship for printmakers, if that's still offered. And then also I'm curious if, or rather, if you guys could discuss if there's like a scarcity around materials on campus. At Brooklyn College, there was a large scarcity around like screen printing ink, emulsion, stuff like that. So I'm curious if you guys are more liberal with the usage of materials. Thank you.
Tomas.
The Leroy Neiman Print Center has a special fellowship in that just by going through it, it's $18,000 additional to whatever you're getting, right? And then in terms of materials and all that stuff, it's just what we have, we supply to you. You don't have to buy those materials for when you're in the program. Oh, well, silkscreen ink, etching inks, all their stuff, emulsions, everything that one would need to make a print. That's all medium. Yeah?
Thank you. And question here.
Sorry, I can't hear a word.
You guys mentioned something about summer residency. Do you mind expanding about that?
No, summer show.
Okay.
The students organize their own summer show off campus, usually somewhere downtown or a space that they discover.
Cool.
So it happens every summer.
Thank you.
Also during the summer, and we hold classes which recent graduates teach those classes. So that's also another opportunity post-graduation.
Okay, there was a question here, and then another question there. Over here.
I'm not sure if this question has already been answered, but if you're a multimedia artist and you're applying for expanded practice, what kind of concentration does one need to focus on while submitting images? I mean, what exactly are you looking for in terms of what needs to be?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there are 2 things, right? Like there are a lot of artists who work with different sort of materials. and are multimedia, but that doesn't necessarily define them as expanded practice. So this is kind of similar to the person who's working in painting and sculpture, right? Like if it's kind of about painting and kind of thinking through those formal and sort of conceptual questions, and maybe that application might be better suited, especially if it has a majority of work in one of those specific mediums, right? When we think about expanded practice, those are things that are sort of outside of all the other concentrations that are offered on the application. So people who might be working in performance, people who are working in performance and sculpture, people who might be working in installation that, you know, is not sort of easily defined and doesn't find a kind of a sure home in another medium. So I think, and there are many people who are very multidisciplinary, so I think thinking about the sort of questions and maybe the material kind of like impetus where your work comes from, like those kind of logics, and looking at your portfolio and finding like there will be something that feels dominant, that makes sense, that applies to those concentrations. And then expanded practice, again, is like something that might be a little bit more ephemeral, something that like maybe deals with new technologies, just like a space that isn't presently defined in those other categories and concentrations.
So is that more interdisciplinary?
Expanded practice? Is that what you're asking? Is that interdisciplinary?
Yeah.
No, I think that is literally kind of like a practice that is different and unquantifiable by the other mediums, right? So you can be an interdisciplinary artist and apply to moving image. You can apply to painting. You can apply to photography, right? Because those things are sort of legible. I think expanded practice starts to make sense when there is that kind of medium-specific illegibility in your work and in the things and in the questions that you're asking.
So just a follow-up question. In the cohorts that you have seen, what percentage from Columbia has been part of this expanded practice? I mean, just vaguely. Out of 20 students, do you every year have like 2 students who are doing expanded practice?
Maybe Laura?
Yeah, but well, I guess in a full year, so like a first year and second year class, it's between, I don't know, 6 and 8. 8 is the highest.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It also changes after people enter. They discover, you know, they walk over to the physics building and discover something that they didn't know about and can decide to add that. So sometimes people can become more expanded practice and your word interdisciplinary after they've already been in the program.
We are starting to wind down. Are there any other Zoom questions? And we have a question here.
Hi, I had a quick question about the letters of recommendation. So I come from an undergrad that is not art related at all, so I feel like having anyone from that program speak on my artistic practice would be a little futile. Would I be penalized for having just, you know, like creative mentors and gallery curators who have more of a presence in my practice and career, like as recommendations?
No, it's really about having a clear picture of your intentions. However, it is interesting, can be interesting to hear about you as a student. So I wouldn't exclude professors in that sense.
Thank you.
And we're winding down, so questions from Zoom. Are there any questions from Zoom, Julie? Okay. Thank you so much. We are now going to go to the last phase, which is breaking up into groups by discipline.